Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S.S, and we are here with another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays, Season 2, Episode 33. Now, as we usually do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw the topics in the comments and pin it as well in the background. I'm going to also put our logo. And as I'm doing all of that, y'all come in, let me know how y'all doing, how y'all feeling, and what's the word. As well as shouts out to all of those who will be here, as well as those who will watch this later, either on Instagram or YouTube. If you're on YouTube, follow your boy, subscribe at A.D.V.I.S.S Speaks, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and hit that notification bell as well for your boy, because there's gonna be more video, more content like this coming out, and we're trying to reach 1,000. So more the better to join and continue to bring this content. But with that, y'all, we got episode 33, and for today's episode, the things that we're gonna be getting into for topics wise. First, we're gonna do, of course, the current events, the news portion of this show, just keeping up with what's going on. Then last, we're going to get into some of choices, since they last, but the next thing we're going to talk about is choice. And then lastly, we're going to talk about where do you stop compromising your values. Okay? But with that, y'all, because it already went right into the next track, what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and we're going to jump into the show song. If you know it, you know it. If you don't, you'll learn it and get to sing along with. So, people nearly ask me, they ask you, what's going on? So we gotta tell them just like this. What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? Tell them like, what's the word? What's the word? What you heard? We gotta know, yeah, what's the word? Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S.S, and we are here with another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays, Season 2, Episode 33. So, thank you for everyone that is here. And for those that will be watching this, your support and your time is greatly appreciated. And when y'all when you come in, please throw in the comments how y'all doing, how you feeling, and what's the word? Because we got to know what's the word. Now, again, like I said, for episode 33, the topics that we got for today are as follows. First thing we're going to get into is the current events, which is the news section. And then second, we're going to talk about choice and take that wherever we're going to end up discussing or talking about it. And lastly, we're going to talk about where do you stop compromising your values. Now, shouts out to the brother Sub Rock in the building with 4 C's, y'all. He gonna see you clearly. So, much love. And shouts out to the brother Chris Millet Music in the building. Much love, much respect, man. Now, with that, y'all, let's go ahead and we're going to jump into these current events. So, for the current events in this section right now, y'all, I got an update for at least what's going on with the pandemic, especially concerning youth and different ways it's being spread. Then we're going to talk about different changes in the U.S. And then we're going to talk about a few other things that are happening politically. And that's all that I have for the news. So if y'all have any other topics or anything that you want to add for a news report, please throw it down in the comments. All right. Now with that, let's get to these current events. So, first article that we got is coming from NPR, and the title of the article reads, "Nearly 1 million kids ages 5 to 11 will have their first COVID shots by the end of today." In this particular case, it is Wednesday. So, again, it's from NPR. Headline, "Nearly 1 million kids ages 5 to 11 will have their first COVID shots by the end of today." Now, as we usually do, I read 2 paragraphs and we're out. So, let's see what they're saying. Article reads, "Beloved stuffed animals in the hand. They lined up at schools, pop-up clinics, and children's hospitals to do something that little kids generally hate to do. Get a shot. COVID vaccinations for 5 to 11-year-olds began in earnest late last week, ramping up over the weekend early this week." And let me do that real quick, a little break in between. By the end of today, which Wednesday, about 900,000 elementary school age children will have gotten their first dose of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. A White House official shared with NPR in advance of an announcement expected later in the day. That represents about 3% of children ages 5 to 11. About 700,000 more have appointments scheduled in the days at pharmacies such as CVS and Walgreens. What's going on, Kundan? Good to see you. Peace and love. What's the word? Next thing. For the White House, this is an early and encouraging sign in the efforts to vaccinate 5 to 11-year-olds, though it is impossible to tell whether these initial numbers tell whether vaccinations will continue apace or hit a plateau of hesitancy as has happened with other age groups. Unlike previous expansions of vaccine availability, the BioNTech from Pfizer vaccine for those younger children comes in smaller dose, which different packaging and smaller needles. So I'm going to drop it there. But again, the article comes from NPR and it says nearly 1 million kids ages 5 to 11 have had their first COVID shots by the end of today. And again, it says nearly, but we'll go into the article and it says about 900,000. So, I mean, another 10,000, it would end up being, not 10,000, another 100,000, it will end up being a million. But they have already approved, and that's what these shots are. I heard supposedly that it is 1/3 of the original. And that's how they base it off of that. So, just letting y'all know, this is the news for that. If y'all have any more, please throw them in the comments. I appreciate y'all. And shouts out to y'all. Alright. Next thing for some COVID news. And I see, alright, I'm gonna get to this comment after this one from the COVID. One more. Now, this article I'm reading comes from NPR as well. And the headline reads, "How SARS-CoV-2, an American deer, can alter the course of the global pandemic." Because remember, when we're talking about SARS-CoV-2, specifically COVID-19 is a code name, but the actual name for the virus is SARS-CoV-2. And now it's become what we would say is a zoonotic disease, so it travels between different species of animals. But let's see what it means by an American deer and it's shifting the global pandemic course. Now, article reads, "Scientists have evidence that the SARS-CoV-2 spread explosively in white-tailed deer, and the virus is widespread in this deer population across the U.S. Researchers say that the findings are quite concerning and could have vast implications for the long-term course of the global pandemic. Since SARS-CoV-2 first emerged, there has been several signals that the white-tailed deer would be highly susceptible to the virus, and that many of these animals were catching it across the country. In last September, computer models suggested SARS-CoV-2 could easily bind in and enter deer cells. A recent survey of white-tailed deer in the Northeast and Midwest found that 40% of them had antibodies against COVID. Basically, I said COVID. Now, veterinarians at the Pennsylvania State University have found that SARS-CoV-2 infections in at least 30% of deer tested across Iowa during 2020. The study published online last week suggests that white-tailed deer could have been or known as a reservoir for the virus. That is, the animal could carry the virus indefinitely and spread it back to humans periodically. So again, I'm gonna leave it there. There's more to this article. Again, this article comes from NPR, and the headline is How SARS-CoV-2 in American Deer Could Alter the Course of the Global Pandemic. Now, the reason why this is an issue is for those folks who do go out and hunt in those particular areas, and you eat, cook, and hunt the deer, and again, that's almost close to like the mad cow disease, H1N1. Knowing that this virus is within the animal will get passed on to you, especially if you do eat deer or venison, whatever it may end up being. Well, at the same time, even if you come in contact with a deer, there's still that possibility of that recirculating and attaching to humans with that contact. I mean, very similar to like rabies, you get bit. Not very similar, but that type of concept is what I'm getting. So that's why this is a issue, because it's showing that they have antibodies, but at the same time, if it passes back to us, that can create and alter another, mutation, etc., etc., etc. But but other than that, y'all, that's that article. If y'all got stuff, please throw them in the comments, and I see a few, so I'm definitely going to get to them. So let's go ahead and we're going to go look into these comments real quick. So we got here says, I read Biden's infrastructure bill passed the House this week after passing in the Senate in August. So on the way to his desk to sign. So only the bigger Build Back Better bill left to pass. When Biden's previous bill passed, my uncle's Obamacare medical bill got reduced to Judy a month. Judy $1 a month. Oh, just $1 a month. Okay, so it doesn't have direct personal impact. Interesting. I haven't looked into it. If you know a little bit more on it, please let me know. Because I was hearing about there's been a lot of things at least being passed as well as being stopped, halted, in general. So y'all just, please, thank you. Keep sharing. Now, next article I got for y'all. And this is having to do with jobs. Since that has been a very, not even touchy subject, but a very blatant subject that's out there, very known because of the fact of what's happened with the pandemic. Now, this article comes from the Wall Street Journal, and the headline reads, Jobless claims fall to pandemic low, continuing downward trend. So again, 2 paragraphs, we're out. So, article reads, worker filings for unemployment insurance edged lower last week, continuing their long glide path towards pre-pandemic levels as the labor market improves. Initial claims for jobless benefits, a proxy for layoffs, declined to 267,000 last week from a revised 271,000 the prior week, the Labor Department reported Wednesday. The 4-week moving average for weekly claims was 278,000 for the week ending November 6th. Claims have been declined since the average reached a peak recent of 424,000 in mid-July. Those that are unemployed have very little fear of being let go, said Lindsay, chief economist at Stifel Financial. Job openings continue to rise according to private employer surveys. Retail and hospitality, leisure and logistics firms say that they can't find enough workers. They are sweetening their offers to current and prospect employees to avoid staff shortages during the critical holiday and shopping season and travel season. So, reason why I bring this up is in a lot of different places, unemployment ran out, and a lot of jobs have been in need of more people to work. The workforce has been very low in a lot of different areas. It says specifically retailers, hospitality, because of you got the holiday season coming, so you would definitely need a lot more workers to deal with all the rushes. You got your holiday sales. You have Black Friday for Christmas, etc. All of this stuff. And the reason I'm bringing it back up is because it's still in the midst of this whole situation with needing to either get this shot or be able to test weekly, etc. and etc. I know I'm using that's my code word for today, but just giving you a look to see that there is a downward trend of now there's more people getting back into the labor force because it's needed to make things circulate and keep moving around. But we will see. We'll continue to see as more data and things happen. But let's go on to the next one, y'all. It does have a direct personal impact. Got you. Okay. So it's something. I feel it. Okay. I see what you mean. All right. Next article, y'all. And it's still pertaining to, again, the U.S. and the economy. This comes again from Wall Street Journal. And the headline for this one reads, U.S. inflation reached 30-year high in October. Now, I don't know if some of y'all, wherever everyone is at, but I know that the cost of living for a number of different things in inflation has risen, especially in the certain foods and products that you get, not only because of the changing of times, but also because of the shortage of food and products, as well as the distancing and things when it comes to the pandemic and still figuring out, protocol for safely doing things, mask mandates, vaccine mandates, etc., etc. Now, article, 2 paragraphs, and we're out. Article reads, U.S. inflation hit a 3-decade high in October, rising at a 6.2% annual rate. That's a big thing. As pandemic-related supply shortages continued strength and consumer demand continued to push prices up. The Labor Department said that the Consumer Price Index, which measures the consumer's pay for goods and services, increased at the fastest annual pace since 1990. Inflation also topped 5% for the 5th straight month. The so-called Core Price Index, which excludes the often volatile categories of food and energy, in October climbed to 4.6% from a year earlier, higher than September's 4% rise and the largest increase since 1991. Now, I'm not going to keep going into more of the numbers, but basically just letting y'all know, and y'all probably have seen it and witnessed it, of basically products going up in price. Most of that having to do, again, with the shortage and especially the lockout still going on with resources being transported, especially in the LA harbor, and they're trying to get off the boats, and it's not enough truckers, etc. Since there's a shortage of people working and then a shortage of space to put things and get everything all set in order, there's going to be a backup call. So there's going to be more people when it is the supply and demand. So you have a shortage of things, the scarcity, the more that is going to go up because you're not going to be able to refill whatever the product is. So yeah, it's affecting a lot when it comes to the economy. Now, if y'all got anything on that, please throw it in the comments. Now I got 4 more for us, and after that we'll be done with the news. But again, if y'all have any other news reports or topics you want to share, please put them down there in the comments. Now, next one I have, because I know I don't do a lot of what happens around in different areas of the world, but this article caught my eye, and the article comes from NPR, and the headline reads, Chile's president has been impeached over the Pandora Papers allegations. Now, yeah, so this is Latin America. Now you're wondering, okay, what are the Pandora Paper allegations? We're going to read the article and we're going to find out. I know a bit already. A few people in here already know what it is. But we're going to read it and we're going to figure out why that's the case of getting the president of Chile impeached. So, few paragraphs, 2 paragraphs, and we're out. Boom. Santiago, Chile. President Sebastian, and I'm not going to even try, it was a Pinera, might be wrong, was impeached Tuesday by the lower house of Chile's Congress, setting up a trial in the nation's Senate over whether to remove him due to allegations he favored the sale of a family property while in office. The vote to accept the charges got to the bare minimum of 78 votes needed in the 155-member chambers of deputies and followed a marathon 20-hour session. 67 legislators voted against the constitutional accusation, including several members of the opposition. Others abstained or were absent. Now I'm going to skip to the part right here. The Senate deliberates on his fate will occur in the heat of the election campaign to replace him in any case. The first round of the general elections was set for November 21st, and Pineda's term ends on March 11th. Chile does not permit presidential re-election to consecutive terms, so can't have consecutive presidents. Interesting. Now, what y'all want to know, what the heck Pandora Papers are. So, right here, and we'll be done. The accusation stems from the publication of the so-called Pandora Papers, which revealed offshore financial dealings of prominent figures around the world, including Pineda, one of Chile's wealthiest people. The documents leaked revealed that one of Pineda's sons used offshore companies in the British Virgin Islands for sale of the Dominga mining project, which his family co-owned. So, Pandora Papers. Basically, big prominent figures are put in offshore in their money so they can avoid taxes and things and that much, etc. And it was posted, so you know a lot of folks who are on there, and this is what the accusations are for the president. But as of right now, it's saying that he's been impeached, or at least from the article, they're figuring all of that stuff out. But I wanted to share that to at least get some more perspective on what's happening outside of the U.S. and in different places, specifically in Chile and Latin America. But yeah, these Pandora Papers, interesting. But let's go on to the next one as we continue. Now this one is a bit interesting because this has been a talk of news lately, especially. And this article comes from the Houston Public Media, also in conjunction with NPR. And this headline reads, Governor Greg Abbott forms concert safety task force in the aftermath of the Astroworld tragedy. So, for those who don't know what happened, Travis Scott had a tour going on, Astroworld, and there was a big incident. to where I think there's about 8 folks who passed on, a number that were injured, and it was very tragic of those folks passing on, as well as the whole situation. So now this is making the governor and a lot of other different places and organizations look at how they have a task force and safety force when it comes to concerts of that large value. Now, 2 paragraphs and we're out. Boom. Governor Greg Abbott on Wednesday announced the formation of a task force on the concert safety after Friday's Astro World Festival left 8 people passed on and hundreds more injured. The Texas Task Force on Concert Safety will be led by the Texan Music Office Director Brendan Anthony, and will hold roundtable discussions with the goal of enhancing security at future concerts across the state, the governor said. The task force will then produce a list of recommendations and strategies to ensure the tragedy that occurred at Astroworld never happens again, according to Abbott. I'm not going to read the rest more of this, but that's the gist of it, is that from this, they're creating a task force and re-looking at safety when it comes to those concerns. So most likely looking at security, looking at how things are organized, who are the organizers, as well as, again, making those recommendations and strategies so that you can avoid something like this in the future. Because, you don't expect you going to a concert or going to a festival and something like that of a large, scale happening. But again, these are examples of that. And now things are set in play after that happens. Unfortunately, something tragic and things like that have to happen before laws and other stuff like that is set up to come out of it. We're not very good as a people or places, as a people in places to do prevention. We're more so do crisis, and when things happen, then we want to create something from it. But again, that happens. But such a huge lesson to be learning from that. But if y'all have anything else, please throw it in here. Again, this was from the Houston Public Media, and the title was Governor Greg Abbott forms concert safety task force in the aftermath of the Astroworld tragedy. Now, 2 more and we out, y'all. This one kept popping in my line on all the other news places that I was reading, so I had to at least touch on it real quick because it's happening right now. But this article comes from NPR, and the headline reads, Defense calls for mistrial as Kyle Rittenhouse takes the stand in his homicide trial. Now, for those folks who do not know who Kyle Rittenhouse is, he is I forgot how old he is, the 18-year-old. It's going to tell you in the article, so I might as well just let the article speak for itself. So 2 paragraphs and we're out. Article reads, Kyle Rittenhouse, the 18-year-old who shot and killed 2 demonstrators at a racial justice protest last year in Kenosha, Wisconsin, took the stand in this highly watched homicide trial to say he feared for his life when he fired his rifle. In dramatic testimony Wednesday, Rittenhouse described a sequence of events that said left him feeling afraid for his life, starting with being chased by a man who made death threats and reached for his gun, leaving Rittenhouse with no choice but to shoot him, he said. Afterwards, he pursued and was attacked by a mob, Rittenhouse said, as he tried to make his way to the police to turn himself in. At one point, he broke into sobs, prompting the judge to call for a break. I didn't want to kill, but I had to kill anybody. I was being attacked, Rittenhouse said. Prosecutors spent hours cross-examining Rittenhouse, pressing him on every detail of the shooting in an effort to paint him as the aggressor whose actions escalated the danger that night and made others fear for their own lives. By causing others to fear for their lives, prosecutors argued Rittenhouse was responsible for the confrontations that he perceived to be life-threatening. Now, again, I'm not going to read on to this, but I just wanted to bring that back to y'all because I know that was a big headline, yes, last year about this situation popping off from this 18-year-old in quote-unquote self-defense during that racial justice protest. Now, I'm not going to talk more of it. Y'all can go look it up yourself. Again, NPR. The title is Defense Calls for Mistrial as Kyle Rittenhouse takes the stand in his homicidal trial. So, that's that there. Now, I got one more article, and then we move on to the next topic. But let me look into these comments and see what y'all got. Peace and one love to the brother Zachariah. Made it. Good to see you in here, my G, man. What's the word with you? What's the word? It said, Rittenhouse was crying white tear as usual and during the whole reverse victimhood gaslighting narrative song and dance. I just saw like a small snippet of a video and someone was commenting on that same thing you were saying. Same thing. The defense is calling for a mistrial based on a technicality. It turns out the judge is a Trumper too because his ringtone rang in the courthouse with the Trump rally song. Interesting. Wow. There it goes, y'all. There it goes, y'all. Right. Interesting. I'm going to leave it at that. Now, let's go on to the next and last article for today, but I thought it was very least poignant to point it out. And this article comes from NPR again, and the headline reads, people exposed to lead in Flint, Michigan water will get a $626 million settlement. And I'm glad it's being brought up because we talk about this so many times. But let's go ahead. 2 paragraphs and we're out. Boom. Detroit. Article reads, a judge on Wednesday approved the $626 million settlement for Flint residents and others who were exposed to lead contaminated water. Most of the money, $600 million, is coming from the state of Michigan, which was accused of repeatedly overlooking the devastating risk of switching Flint's water source in 2014 without treating the water to prevent contamination. The settlement reached here is a remarkable achievement for many reasons, not the least of which that it sets forth a comprehensive compensation program and timeline that is consistent for every qualifying participant. The U.S. District Judge Judith Levy said. The settlement was announced in August 2020 by Attorney General Dana Nessel, and Governor Gretchen Whitmire, both Democrats who were elected in 2018 while the litigation was pending. Flint managers appointed the then Governor Rick Snyder and regulators in his administration allowed the city to use the Flint River in 2014 and 15 without treating the water to reduce corrosion. As a result, lead in old pipes broke off and flowed through the gaps. The deal makes money available to even every Flint child who was exposed to the water, every adult who can show injury, certain business owners, and anyone who paid water bills. Flint switched back to Detroit Regional Water Agency in the fall 2015 after Dr. Mona Hanna publicly reported elevated lead levels in children. Attorneys have been seeking as much as $200 million in legal fees from the $626 million settlement. So, There's been a settlement for that going on, and now they've settled on 226 million. Now we got to figure out. They're going to figure out how one that's going to be, determined and used, because 600 million came from Michigan, the state. Well, I don't know where the other 26 million is coming from, and those attorneys are seeking 200 million for doing that. So in reality, is it going to be 426 million that's going to be awarded to the folks who are in Flint? All of the residents. I don't know. But I'm glad to hear this, because literally we be speaking and talking about all these other issues that are going on, and folks don't even go back to talking about Flint, Michigan, and they forget about Flint, Michigan, when that's been there since 2014. So I'm glad it's brought back up. I am sending out good energy and good hopes that this is going to get to the folks and not be some way settled where they're going to get little to nothing. So we'll see how this ends up going, y'all. But other than that, y'all, that is the news for tonight. If y'all have any other reports, please throw them in the background. Please, not background, but please throw them in the comments and share it with your brother. Okay? Yes, that's life, man. That's life, man. It's a ridiculous life we live, but at the same time, it's a beautiful thing. But with that, y'all, we're going to move to the next topic, which this topic that I want to talk about has to do with one word: choice. Now you wonder why I'm pausing. I'm over here fixing some stuff too, because I have all my things, last little window set up over here. But yes, y'all, the next topic we're going to talk about is choice. Now, specifically, okay, what do you mean when we talk about choice? Well, we're going to take it where we want to end up taking it. It's with you on it, bro. You in a remix. This is on here. On a random side note. But choice in the sense of, we'll come with the pros and cons, but literally, what is choice? What happens when you make choices? And should we avoid making choices? Those are just some questions and some ideas that I'm getting right now from that. But before I do that, in the comments right now, everyone, it don't matter if you're watching this now or you're watching this later, in the comments, please, throw it in the comments. When you hear the word choice, what words come to mind? Or it can be a phrase. Again, when you hear the word choice, what words or phrases come to mind? So throw them in the comments while I'm pulling up the definition, because I got to give some definitions so we have an idea what we're speaking about. So as y'all are doing that, from the Webster's Dictionary, choice, it's a noun. First definition: the act of choosing. The act of picking or deciding between two or more possibilities. Second definition: the opportunity or power to choose between two or more possibilities. The opportunity or power to make decisions. Third definition: a range of things that can be chosen. Another one, this is the best part. Interesting. A person or thing chosen. A number and variety to choose among. Care in selecting, and a grade of meat, or a grade of meat between prime and good. I get it. Choice rib, choice. I get it. Now there's adjectives, and I'm going to stop there because it could be a noun or an adjective. Next one is adjective: worthy of being chosen, selected with care, and then of high quality or of grade between prime and good. Again, it's very similar to the noun. So just depending on how you use the word, it'll be either noun or adjective. But with that, see what y'all got in here. It says being able to use the gift free will to control your fate. Oh, yeah, the gift of free, yeah. See, look at, I already put it in there right when I see you put in the of. I already dropped it in there before even looking. But yes, appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. Now, when it comes to the whole concept, or even before I even jump into it, if anybody wants to join, this will be the time to start joining in on the conversation and the reasons for these topics. Again, this is the disclaimer. If you do not want to, or you do not want to be on YouTube, it's okay. You can stay right into the comments and add your perspectives from the comments. But if you want to join, just know that it will be posted and put on YouTube later for playback. So if you're not comfortable, the comments is for you. But appreciate y'all's time and y'all support. Now, when we're speaking about choice, reason why I wanted to also bring up choice is because of this situation with the pandemic, with mandates, as well as months back, the whole thing with abortion laws and things. And the main thing, and the main word from those was the freedom of choice. My body, my choice. Right? Now, when I want to speak on how I want to speak on choice is whether, hold on, I already sees it. So I think choice can also be limited by the choices given, yes, or by what we are programmed to want or think we can have, yes. That's basically what I mean. The third definition from choice was one of the points I wanted to speak on, which is a range of things that can be chosen. So the whole idea of the illusion of choice, basically either this or that, or 1, 2, 3, 4 are your only choices that you can have to solve this problem. Versus knowing that you have multiple different choices. Whether it's not to go back to quote or talk about P. Diddy back way when he was doing a campaign of vote or die. There is only those two choices. Those only ways. You either vote or you quote unquote, you're like saying, or die, whatever it may end up being. But another choice that's in there, but that wasn't given, was you don't have to vote. Don't participate. That's it. There's no either that or this, but there's also this one. So, talking about how, just to your point, of how there is a limited amount of choice for you to even choose from to start with. Knowing that there's different solutions and options that you can pick, but they would not be approved or seen as appropriate. So, do you really have a choice in a lot of things that you do? Do you? Can you really choose what you want to end up doing? Especially when you are having debates or talks with people and you're only given these few choices. Do you have that agency, or do you have that opportunity or power to choose between different possibilities? Do you have that? And in some cases, you do. Because in actuality, you don't have limited choices on certain problems. But what keeps you limited to those certain points or possibilities within choice is that consequence that comes after it. So again, back to the example of the mandate. Your choices, or if you want to work, you either would need to get a weekly test, or you would have to end up being fully vaccinated. there is a third choice in there of going through and doing the exemptions. But again, those are still not fully approved. And what I mean by approved is really frowned upon that you want to go and try and do an exemption, even if it's for health or religious reasons. And even when you do that, you still got to end up getting tested regardless. But you do have other options besides not having to test, get the shot, or even worrying about going through the exemptions. You can decide that you don't want to do any of that. But again, when you make that choice, the consequence behind that in this case would, especially if you were working at a place that started to require all these things, is that you'll be out of a job. And then that creates another consequence of now you're out of the job. Now you have no funds or money to pay for anything. On top of the inflation, on top of the bills, on top of everything else that goes along with that choice, you have to be ready for that. And that's where that limited idea of choice becomes very potent, because of the fact that there's so many consequences behind that. So for you to lower those risks, you go with what the limited choice is. Even though that there's not only just this or that and this, there's also you deciding not to want to do any of those things. But it's the consequences is what really keeps you to those choices. Now let me read the comments and we're going to continue going. They say, yeah, that abortion was interesting because it's not the state suing people, but empowering regular people to sue each other and essentially be bounty hunters. That we are slowly but surely, and it's already been going on, is dividing ourselves in multiple different groups and missing the point when it comes to addressing powers that be, quote unquote. Now, even conservative Supreme Court judges hate it because they know two can play the same game. Like a liberal state putting $1 million bounty on AR-15 owners. Yeah. You create a mess, or you start a mess, and then you see what it continues to blow up to. Again, the consequence behind the choice. Now, getting back into, okay, now, why would you want to make a choice, or, reasons for making the choice? Now, that can vary. Because to have the agency to be able to, or the power to be able to choose things, you got to be able to already have some type of foundation within yourself, financially, mentally, spiritually, etc., to make what we would say an effective decision. Now, why you would make choices is simple as this. It's for you to continue addressing what is happening to you in life. So if you decide not to make any type of choices at all, that would be synonymous with just giving up on life. Because at the end of the day, you have a choice to just lay in bed all day. You have a choice to watch and just look into your phone all day. You have a choice to eat multiple pizzas, eat gallons of ice cream, do all of these things. But ultimately, what will that actually do and help you with when it comes to solving day-to-day problems? Besides, again, not leading into complacency, not leading it, possibly I say, leading into complacency, possibly leading into laziness, possibly leading into escapism. But choices help you to be able to prioritize what needs to be done. And it adds that fuel to the fire of you understanding why you're doing things that you do. You examine your choice. You examine why you're picking the options or the possibilities that you're picking. And then you figure out, okay, since I made that possibility and that choice, can I solve this particular problem? So again, you can choose to lay in the bed all day. But if you know that you got bills, you need gas, you got family, and so more, that choice for you laying in the bed all day is not going to happen. It's not going to happen because you know, again, what those consequences are going to be if you decide, okay, I don't want to do any of that. You let down your family, you let down yourself, your expectations, as well as your current foundation of what you guys set begins to get challenged. And again, challenge is good, but when it comes to making choices, there's the difference between making quote unquote right as well as quote unquote poor choices. Now, let's get into those differences of the pros and cons of making choices, depending on what it is. Before I do that, let me see in the comments what we got. It say, yeah, Texas thought it was cute making that law, but it does represent the larger increasing trend of turning us against each other or into each other, each others prison guards. Yeah, we start policing, ourselves. It's saying, yeah, the ice cream example. Follow temporary cravings or long-term desire. Yes. Now, the pros and cons when it comes to choices and choosing. Of course, I'm pro for choosing is be able to have, the opportunity or the autonomy to make a decision on something in your life. The pro is like you have that autonomy, you have the power to do so with what you've given. Hey,
Hey,
what's going on? Kunin, what's the word?
hey, what's up?
From dark to light, we come back
Yes.
to now make
Mm-hmm.
a choice. But how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What's the word?
Pretty good. I had my poetry book club on Sunday. That was fun.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
It's a good turnout.
Well, no one showed up in person, but I went on IG Live and we had like the three of us, and it ended up transforming kind of spontaneously into a writing workshop as well because I had people use the poems as a kind of writing prompt and respond with their own poem on the spot,
Oh
like
wow,
verbally expressing spontaneously. So almost like a freestyle as well. So everybody did that, including me, and it was really fun. Like,
I'm glad to hear that. That's what's up. That's it's the
hmm
improv. The like you said, on the spot, that
yeah,
spontaneous. That's all of that is all reminiscent and similar to freestyling. So yes, but
yeah.
that's
I
dope.
think it
I'm
was
glad.
kind of even. It might even have been the first time I did something like that, where uh, especially on the live, I've done freestyles before, but more like privately on my own.
Got you.
So that was really fun. It was like a high, like to suddenly uh bring something that is at first this vague energy above my head and then bring it down into my body and then ground it and express it like that, direct
Yes.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
it's an amazing feeling. Yeah.
I literally say it a lot. Freestyling comes from that inner core of your soul. So I mean, basically, when you
Mm-hmm.
freestyling to somebody, you sharing a bit of yourself to people, and that's to me
Mm-hmm.
it's a spirit. For me, it's a spiritual expression when you freestyle.
I
To
think
me
so,
personally,
yeah.
because you unknowingly will tell your story without you even really thinking, oh, am I really saying
That's
something?
what
And it's
it
like,
ended up
yeah,
happening. I ended up literally creating and making up a story on the fly, talking
exactly,
about this
exactly.
story.
And you
Yeah.
had the choice to not even do
Mm.
that at all, but you still decided
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
but
exactly. Yeah.
but rounding it in here, what is your points or your takes on at least the word choice and what we were at least speaking about earlier in the comments and right now?
Yeah. I'm so glad this is the topic because as I've mentioned in numerous other episodes, and it might be beating a dead horse at this point, but there's always new people watching.
Yeah.
But like we really have to drop the illusion that we have more choice than we do. We actually have less choice than we think, but we
Mm,
still have the choice. And well, we still have the choice to question our choices. And the moment we do that, the moment we drop these assumptions that even our desires are our own desires and
yes.
really question where they come from, then ironically we end up having more choice. Like our choices expand, but we have to drop the assumption that uh, in the beginning we have to drop the assumption that all of our choices are our own or that we have enough choices.
Yes.
Yeah,
Um, I agree with you on definitely on that.
yeah,
That's why I always find it's very important to always know the why, especially when you're doing stuff
hmm,
and that
yeah,
reasoning behind it. Because once you're able to do
yeah,
that,
the why.
you start to notice again what's being given to you, for face value, and then asking yourself, is that all that is there? Is there any other
Exactly.
options and other, possibilities that I can choose from versus, oh, you only said I can have apple or blueberry pie. Like I know there's
Right.
different ones that can be there, or there's the option of I don't want to eat it at all, and that's there
Hmm.
too. But again,
Hmm.
that's why I was speaking on it earlier, saying that the reason why choice can be limited, and it's limited in the sense of yes, you're not going to have unlimited possibilities for one particular problem because you don't need an infinite amount of possibilities for a problem, because what that also does, and this is one of the cons, is that when you have too much choice, you're not going to be able to have an effective way to decide what you want, again, because you speak on the desires. If you have too much
Hmm.
choice, that can overload a person to the point that they decide that they don't even know what to do. They become
Hmm.
indecisive, don't know what to do. But going back to that, with the whole idea of having, at least the limited choice and figuring out, okay, this is the only things I can
Hmm.
choose from. A part of that is because of the consequence that can happen after the fact. So you know that if you do make a choice between either the this or that, or go outside of the bounds, you know, if you're thinking about it, again, this is if you're critically thinking about it, you'll see that if I decide, okay, I don't, again, want to get up today and I just want to sleep in all day, and you
Hmm.
have bills, you have to get money and things for food, again, you have to sustain, this lifestyle that you're doing. You missed out on a whole days of work. You have to also call in to let them know that you're not going to be there. You might have, called in multiple times before. Now you're getting written up, and there's multiple, many things that just happen. As not saying it's going to be always happening, but a domino effect can happen depending on the fact that you just choose that. You know what? I don't even feel like getting up today and going to work. But you know that you lost out on money that day that you're gonna need to pay for. Either if you live in an apartment or if you live, in a house or wherever you end up living. For that, for groceries, etc. But because of that consequence, those are the only choices you got.
Hmm.
But again, these are for the folks
Yeah.
that if it's only a course, I'm using an example in the case that you only have a 9 to 5. I'm not talking about if you have some other means of having and getting money and doing whatever you do. I'm talking
Hmm.
about if you specifically have only a 9 to 5. The basically the consequence is going to limit your choice. Me personally, that's what
Hmm.
I've seen. I don't know. What do
Yeah.
you feel on that, Kunde?
Yeah. Like even with that example, right? They still have a choice to, and again, it goes back into the self-awareness that I'm bringing up, right? Like, I think I told a client recently during a call, and I've said this to other clients as well, where because we think that the strategy, right,
Mm-hmm.
the strategy to get what we really want is the only option we have. We get addicted to the strategy, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so even with that example, like when I say strategy, like what we actually want, in my opinion, is either to feel something or to be a certain way,
Mm.
to embody a certain way of being, or just to feel something, right? Like so, like even with the ice cream example, right? The
Mm-hmm.
comfort food, right? Or people who smoke. Well, I don't want to give the example because
Yeah.
I don't smoke, but I would imagine it's similar to why I might choose ice cream or comfort food when I'm feeling stressed out, even though I know that long term it might not be too healthy for me if I keep doing it, if I eat too much of it, right?
Yes.
So, and on the surface, like the thought is, oh, I just want ice cream, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, if I go deeper, that's just the strategy,
Yeah.
right? What I actually want to feel is, oh, maybe I'm stressed out and I want to feel comfort or I want to feel relaxed.
Yeah.
Same thing with the person who would rather be sleeping all day than go to work. At that moment, maybe they want to feel comfort, to feel ease, to
Yeah.
feel relaxed, um, and even maybe to feel free, ironically, to feel like maybe they're angry and resentful that they are tied to this job. And
Yes.
for once, they might be feeling rebellious and being like, I just want my freedom today,
Yep.
right? So all of these things. And but in their mind they think sleeping all day and not working is the only option that I have. It's the
Yeah.
only way, the only strategy to fulfill these desires.
Yes.
But the moment you realize what you really want, these are the feelings I want. And then
Yes.
even beyond feelings into the ways of being that you want to be, like being joy or being compassion, being equanimity, things like that.
Yes.
Uh, being love. Then then the strategies open up more. You realize, okay, it brings up the question, okay, what are other ways
Mm-hmm.
for me to have the same feeling?
Yeah. And
then
I'm
you
yes.
realize then you realize, okay, maybe I will compromise today and go to work, but I'm going to build a longer term strategy for me to have a second business so that I do have the freedom that I want,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
So that can be one option, and it's an option out of many. But if you think this is the only option, that's when the choices really become limited for you. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's similar to the example I gave earlier a few calls, a few months ago about the person who thought he wanted to go back to school to get his PhD. On the
Yeah.
surface, he was positioning himself with, oh, I just want a better job. But in reality, once his coach kept asking him, what does that get you? What does that get you? Over and
Yeah.
over again. Finally, the real answer came out, which was, oh, I want to prove myself to my father, right? So
Mm.
again, that was his closer to his true desire, and he was addicted to the strategy of
Yeah.
going back to school, right? But what if what he actually wanted was to get respect from his father, to feel connected to him, right?
Yeah.
So either he can find other ways of making that happen, other strategies, or he can maybe, depending on his relationship with his father, I don't know, but I assume maybe that another
Mm.
option that could have opened up for him was for him to realize that maybe he can never prove himself to his
Self.
father, that he doesn't need
Mm.
his approval, and he can have his own self-respect back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm. And I'm glad you brought that up. And at the same time, shouts out to the brother Saab You Smooth in the building.
Yes, obvious mode.
The booth is on fire. I'm gonna say it every time. But I'm glad you brought that point up because again, we speak on we have logic, we also have emotions. When you
Mm-hmm.
have your decisions and you're making those and you got the choices, it's going to be rooted in both of those. But ultimately at the end, we know that you said the desires and the emotion is what's going to keep, or basically be the ending factor. So a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
when we're trying to come up with, okay, what are the choices going to be and what's going to be that outcome, it's really, dealing with and seeing the emotion that's behind that and how we're going to, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
satisfy it or figure out how to adjust yourself to receive that. And then that's why it invites more of a reasoning for you to figure out, okay, why do I not want to go to work today? Why
Mm-hmm.
do I want to continue to eat this whole pint of ice cream? Or
Mm-hmm.
why do I decide to
Mm-hmm.
feel saddened by not having enough gas?
Mm-hmm.
You figure it out due to not only, because I like to say emotion is energy and motion. So from that energy that you're putting in to make your choice, because you got to put some type of effort into the choice that you make. You don't just be like, like we don't know what or any type of number. You still putting out energy regardless to that choice that you want to make. But the whole idea
Mm-hmm.
that what's the underlining meaning and the why, again, that emotion behind the choice that you're going to make. And depending on that emotion and desire that you want for the problem, like you said, that's where it's like, no, that's the only option I have for that choice. That's the only one. When in actuality, that might not be the case. You take the time, you expand it, you'll have multiple options to choose from, because then you know the why behind you're going to make the choice that you make. Um, I'll use it again as an example for myself. The whole situation, of course, with job finding right now for myself. I say I have only a few options or limited options and choices is due to the constraints for each of the jobs. So that means either you're getting a shot, especially the type of work I would be going into, which is social work. So that's a lot more, rather working in the schools or working,
Mm-hmm.
it can even be for the county, locally, wherever that is. But a lot of the social work field related careers and jobs is having that spike of needing that. And for me personally, again, I'm not recommending or saying that, oh, you should or you shouldn't get the shot or do whatever you need to. You do what you need to prevent as well as keep yourself safe.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just sharing at least my take and what's going on with me and why my choices in that particular case have been limited. Now, the reason why I say that is now in California, I'm specifically California, y'all. For some of the places that I was applying to, the option of the weekly testing got thrown out if you did not want to end up getting the shot. And now it was you either get the shot or it's a no-go. Yes, you can get the
Oh, they
option to
changed
still,
it. Oh.
yeah. And yes, you got the option to appeal and get, of course, the exemption, whether if it's medical or if it is religious. But even those particular options is not a guarantee. So
Mm-hmm.
even if you get yourself into the place, especially me when I was applying to do all of that stuff, I only had a certain amount of time to do these things, and it still wasn't guaranteed. And I already had to put in, if not before I was going to do it, I had to put in another amount of money to do all the other services, whether it was me going to go get, of course,
Mm-hmm.
fingerprinted, whether it was for me to go to a clinic, et cetera, et cetera. There was money I had to put in initially to still have a possibility that even if I don't get the exemption, that will be it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it became limited options because, well, I got money on the line, even though I'm not in a good financial state. That if I invest in doing something like that with the least bit of money that I got, and then the conclusion comes out to be, well, now you need to go get this, then it makes it even tougher for me to be like, well, I just already went such and such money in the hole. Now I only have these last options to go with since now it wasn't approved. So
Mm-hmm.
what ends up happening in that case is then it's literally, okay, either you want the job or you don't. And when you decide no, that's not the case, you
Mm-hmm.
feel that the only way is that, well, I can't take it. And then you figure out, I figured out, okay, well, it was just not the right one for me.
Mm-hmm.
And behind that, you're wondering, like, okay, then, what was all of that limited choice to? Well, it started off, again, like I said, I saw there's multiple ways because at first, for me, ultimately, I already knew. I'm still looking into the shot and things. I really want more research, so much other stuff. They'd be like, oh, but then you're this. I need some details because there's so much stuff coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I read too many articles. Shouts out to y'all. Shouts out to this show. So that's how I know a lot of things continue to
Because you're
change.
not vaccinated yet, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
because of that, I already knew going into it, these would be the only ways I'll be able to do it. Ultimately, I know the energy behind why I'm going into it is because so I can literally be financially stable and be able to pay a lot of things off. So this is that, as
Mm-hmm.
well as honestly, this is part of my purpose. I love working with the youth. I
Mm-hmm.
like being in a community of not only just children but family and staff that are working together to at least provide the youth with environment of learning. So that's a part of the reasons why I would even applied, and I would have to figure out my choices depending on that. But because that's the case, and shouts out to the brother Kid Huey P in the building, brother Mister Huey P
Hello.
in the building. What's going on? Um, that I was just like, you know what? These are my only choices to combat my willingness to want to still, again, my passion to work with the youth, but at the same time to also take that power of choice of my health.
Mm-hmm.
So once I figured out, okay, well,
Yeah.
now all the choices started to dwindle away due to how things would
Mm-hmm.
change. I ultimately was like, you know what? Then, I'm out of the game. But
Mm-hmm.
now that I've seen that side of this district, there's a multitude of other different places that actually don't even do those particular things that other district is doing. So it just opened up the opportunities for me to see where other places.
So
I know
there
that was
are other
long and drawn out,
districts.
y'all. Yeah, so there's
So
there's
there
other
are other
districts.
districts that don't require the vaccination.
There's other districts that don't, and they require just weekly testing,
No.
as
Okay.
well as in my particular case too. I have a credential that was needed
Mm.
to also do it, and I went and I invested money in getting a credential. And no, in other districts, some districts they don't even require that credential.
Oh.
So it even opens the door for now more possibilities and choice to pick all the different
Mm.
different titles within that district,
Right.
knowing that a lot of the barriers have been taken up, which gets to my point of another thing on
And it's
choice.
all still within the driving distance, right? So yeah.
It's gonna still be. It would have been the place that I was hearing about, but my brother ended up getting the job. Shouts out to him. It would have been about 30, 35 minutes away from me. Now, the other
Oh,
places
okay.
that I'm seeing is almost about an hour away. But again, I need to do more research on it. But
Mm-hmm.
just showing you, again, on the other side, we can say a con to choices too is that it provides, but it can also create barriers when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to solving an issue or problem. In my case, because of the choices that I was making, the barrier for me is that literally I'm not going to be able to get hired in particular places because of those
Mm-hmm.
options that they have.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, shouts out to the brother Runaway Boy Steve Wall Street in the building. And that's been one of my other things too that's been going on with me. Since that's the case,
Mm.
I've been having a choice to play around with the market, cryptocurrency, etc., or at least with the last bit of money that I've
Mm.
had. And if I had a lot more to invest with, I would definitely would choose to put it in there because the places that I've been investing in have actually received a lot of return, but I didn't have a good amount of money to invest with it, so I can't see a bigger return. So I could have actually been making some more money off of the investments that I did. But again, going all to the choices because of what I made when it came to where I was going to work. But yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the choices for you are like either to get vaccinated or to get the exemption or to work at other districts, or to find some other way, even like starting your own business or something, to work with youth, like
Yeah.
because I remember like I used to work with youth in my country of origin because my mom actually started her own school at her house, at our house. Um,
Mm,
but in the United States, I accidentally ended up working with youth uh, because I taught photo reading
yes.
to and like learned the course and I retaught it to. At first, I taught it to adults and basically people in my circle, but eventually I went to Craigslist and posted an ad saying I can teach photo reading, and uh, there was a parent who reached out to me and like, I want you to teach this, but not for me, for my child, like teach it to my child.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sure. Like, and the child was like, I think 9 or something.
Mm,
And then we taught at the Tustin Library, and yeah, it's like, and so it was kind of like a semi-public place. You could rent a room for free for 2 hours at the Tustin Library.
wow.
And yeah, so as long as there's at least 2 people, they allow it. You can have a private room, which and yeah, so I taught like that kid for like 3 or 4 weeks, and it was pretty fun. Like, and imagine like learning such a powerful technique to read at such a young age.
Yes.
So it's no wonder the parent wanted me to teach the kid, and that's kind of how I fell into that for a bit of time. Like,
Hmm. Again, see, and that's what I can say on the pro side of choices is that I mean, once you start to see what other choices you have, it starts to open more rooms and possibilities. It might even land you in
mhm.
places that you wasn't even expecting that it would end up landing you. Like you said, with teaching teaching children things, you was not expecting that, but it happened.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but on top of having that choice, you know, the whole overall that I want to say personally, when it comes to choice, whether you take it or you don't take it. What's going on, Viz? Good to see you in here. Studios in the building. Vision Studios in the
what's up,
building.
Vision Studios?
Um, the overall with choice that I want to just drive home is that it's important that you analyze your choices, whatever they are, for your particular problem, and figure out the why behind the initial choice that you want to make, and see if there is other options and possibilities for it. That's
Hmm.
mostly it. Because the choice, rather regardless, we're not gonna go, saying that there's a good, poor choice, and there's a good choice, bad choice, etc., and stuff of that nature. It all depended
Hmm.
on the situation, the environment, the person, all these different variables. But in general, when it comes to that choice, understand what all the choices are, why you're picking a certain choice, and then be aware of what other options can come from out of that.
Yeah, especially with our cravings, it's even more important to question like where they come from. Like the example Yuval Noah Harari gave about, going to the grocery store and buying Coke instead of Pepsi, and you think it's your choice, but you don't realize that you just saw an ad, with a sexy woman
Mm,
uh, drinking Coke. If you're heterosexual, if you're gay, they might even have customized the ad for you because they can tell nowadays with the eye recognition technology and
yes.
show you, a shirtless guy. Uh, and then one day you go to the grocery store and you end up buying Coke instead of Pepsi, and you think it's your choice, but is it really?
Yeah. And that example has still been going on, y'all. It's been like 4, 5 weeks strong with that example. If y'all
Yeah,
don't get it, now you know, man. That example can be used for a number of the different topics we've been talking about. But ultimately, I like
yeah,
now you get into the point of the idea of how choice can, again, it can be programmed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it
Inception. Yeah.
inception, thinking that you think that's the option you want, but ultimately it's the option that you've been programmed to want. I get it,
Mm-hmm.
but that's again into the whole idea of the whole illusion of choice, of controlled choice, of
Mm-hmm.
giving people a small range of things to choose from. But at the same time, the certain choices that you give, you've already put into their minds what would be the appropriate one to choose. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
you are making your odds greater of having them choose that particular choice, whether if it is a 25%, if you have four different choices, whether if it's 33, you have three, or if it's 50% where you only have two, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You've already made associations based off of what you've already telling people, the way you advertise, the way that you've marketed what you want to give people. They're going to choose exactly what you want because you're only limiting them to this. Even if you end up telling them, for example, and we're going to talk about food because, again, we all eat food. I hope we do, you know, but you know that the person, I'm using this as an example for a person who eats meat, for those folks.
Mm-hmm.
You have your choices of whether you're going to get a Tyson chicken. And people love Tyson. Some people love Tyson chicken. Whether you're going to get you a ribeye steak from like a very notable meat packager. I don't know because I personally don't eat any of that, so I don't know. Or you're going to have um, um, some fish from another particular notable owner, or you're going to end up choosing something around at least the vegan area. Now, for the meat
Mm-hmm.
person, you already end up excluding that option of you like, nah, I don't want anything in that particular case vegan. And knowing that,
Mm-hmm.
say you are the Tyson company, most of the time, because a lot of people do choose chicken. It's not only just excluded or included for one particular race. This is for a multitude of people. I got homies who do,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not of my particular race, quote unquote, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But Tyson already knows, okay, the likability of you getting chicken into your diet has been very high because we've been sending stuff to your house. We have coupons and other stuff of that nature
Mm-hmm.
for you to get that chicken. And we know that you use it as a staple within your diet. So more times likely that you're going to buy the Tyson chicken over anything else. So you go to the market and you only have those three choices whether you're going to, I said four. You only have those three choices whether you're going to get the Tyson chicken, the fish, or you're going to get the T-bone steak, whatever it is. In your particular case, you think, oh man, because we're trying to eat a bit more, quote unquote, you know, healthier in the state, you know, why don't we get a little bit more of the chicken versus getting the other two? Because we've heard that if you get this type of fish, it has this in it. Or if you get this meat, you know that sometimes they don't get packaged the right way. So I'm going to go with the chicken. Knowing the fact you think that's of your own choice, but knowing that Tyson already sent you coupons, already was been advertising it to you on your phone, and when you get there, you're like, okay, that's what I want to get. When ultimately that may not even what you want to end up getting a point. Maybe you wanted the T-bone, maybe you wanted the fish, but ultimately that's what was marketed and advertised to you. Again, of course, it's not going to happen 100% of the time, but again, it just lets you go back and really critically look at, okay, am I really making a choice that I want for myself, or am I being told from somebody else, either consciously or unconsciously, to make that choice?
Yeah, in fact, the tracking cookies on Facebook and Instagram, right? And Instagram
Mm,
is owned by Facebook. Most people don't know that those cookies are not just for when you're on the app or on the site. They
yeah.
still track you even when you're off site.
Yes.
That's why if you click on a link on Facebook, um, instead of just the actual link, you'll see
Mm-hmm.
actually a very long link because after the link slash, you see the word FBID click, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
a huge series of symbols. That's the tracking cookie.
Yeah.
That's why for me, like I get irritated by it. I would just remove that and then like refresh the site so that I can go on. So I've done that's the option I've done, and so that's me exercising my choice.
Yes.
I tried exercising my choice another way where I went to my Google Chrome settings and just like turned off all like cookies on Facebook,
Yeah.
and Facebook immediately logged me out and I couldn't log back in.
Wow. Yeah, because that's how they make. I mean, a lot of places, if they, if the platform and things are free, there's a number of ways that they gotta make,
If it's
their
free, you
money.
want the product. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah,
Ads, all of that stuff. You put in your
yeah.
information, all of those things. That's what's gonna happen. They sell off that stuff. Even if
Hmm.
you opt out to not have that happen, you're still gonna get hit with personalized ads, regardless.
Yeah.
But
And it is getting more and more personalized to the point that I don't know if I mentioned this before, like similar, so the you want to know right example is still kind of hypothetical, but this one actually happened where there was this father who went to the return and exchange section of Target, and he was really angry because they were sending his daughter pregnancy products, and he was like, "My daughter's not pregnant. Why are you sending me all of this?
yeah,
Like, take it back, and I want." Um, anyways, like coupons for pregnancy and things like that. So, but then just a few weeks later, like, or maybe it might have been like a few days later, the father came back and apologized and was like, "Oh, actually, my daughter is pregnant." So Target knew it first before her own father. That's crazy. Like,
and again, technology is gonna get more and more accurate as it continues to a point. Like we have. I mean, for example, man, you got the smartwatch. If you do,
yeah.
like, it literally is tracking, your heartbeats per whatever you have, how many steps, giving you health reports, all of this stuff is getting to the point of like really knowing what's going on with you to already know, okay, well, I've been noticing his speed has been pretty low. Maybe we should start, advertising this type of, protein or this
Mm,
type of thing to be sent to you. And it just goes all in line again with at the end of the day, depending on what's sent or given to you, will be those deciding factors and choices that you have.
hmm.
But yeah, if you got anything else, Kunin, because I definitely want to continue on. Because if not, we can be on choice all night because there's a
Well,
lot of other
just
things to
one
get
one
into
thing
it.
regarding like being each other's prison guards, right? Which is
Yeah.
another thing that limits choice. Because the Texas abortion law example is really
Mm-hmm.
a powerful example of that, where they make, and it's also partly they did it that way because they didn't want to be sued, where
Accountability.
like they didn't
Mm-hmm.
want the law to be challenged in court.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there is a state, if there's an entity that can be challenged, then the law can be overturned. But if there's no entity that can be challenged, because they're empowering the people to be each other's prison guards to sue
Yeah.
each other by putting this 10,000 bounty on their head.
Yeah.
And so they thought they were being cute or clever, but when they went to the Supreme Court, even the Trump appointed, conservative Supreme Court Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who's normally pro-abortion, was kind of like he didn't like this law at all because he was like basically two can play the same game. Like, what if a left-leaning state put a bounty on AR-15 owners and be like, hey, you guys can sue each other for $1 million. And it will just be like
Mm,
a war of like, there's already too much lawsuits going on in this country.
yeah.
It's gonna like accelerate this, like gonna be like a legal arms race between each other. So that's on a legal level, but I feel like on a psychological and social level, they've already set up a world where they want us. They're trying to make us each other's prison guards. Like it's already happening. Like even
Mm,
on a social level, like for example, like a friend of mine was telling me that she had a date rape experience and she told her sister about her experience. Right?
yeah.
Instead of empathizing, the first thing her sister said was, "What were you wearing?"
Hmm.
So So this is normally something a man would say to a woman in that experience, right? But this is her own sister, basically like being the prison guard of sexism, of these sexist tropes and questions, not like victim blaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, so
Hmm.
there is but there's no external entity telling her to ask the question. It's already been again programmed into her for her to respond in that way.
Yeah. Again, a lot of folks have learned and studied human psychology very well. So they know the ins and outs and the desires of folks. Again, so
Hmm.
the control choice at the end of the day can be
Yeah.
scientifically broken down. But
Hmm. Yeah.
with that, y'all, we're gonna move to the last and final topic for tonight, which is, where do you stop compromising
Mm.
your values? Now,
It's a good question considering you brought up, about you don't want the vaccine, which is part of, for you, it's a part of following your values, but your choice to follow that is limited by the the rules that they have at these workplaces.
exactly. And that's why, y'all, and I'm going to say it again until y'all get annoyed at it, until you're finally like, okay, A.D.V.I.S.S, we get you, is I put these topics together on purpose because they coincide with each other to continue the discussion as well as to
Mm.
highlight how that plays off of each other. So again, now when we talk about where do you stop compromising your values, choice is a part of that. For sure it is. That's
Mhm.
definitely there. Boundaries is a part of that. Knowing the awareness of knowing what you value, as well as on top of knowing what the company, the situation, the you know, the establishment, wherever you're going, knowing their particular values and their rules that set up. Now,
Mhm.
on top of all of that, I wanted to talk about, or at least pull out the word compromise in particular, because
Mhm.
that word for me, every time I've heard it, yes, I've had a negative connotation to the word compromise. Now, I
Mhm.
want to read as the definition and apply that to how we're going to continue the discussion on top of this. Again, so again, this is the definition for compromise, and I'm getting this from the Webster Dictionary. So if you're like, yo, there's other dictionary, I know, but Webster's Dictionary also has multiple other ways, as well as shout out to the sister Chris for always saying, yo, go and try this one. But compromise, it is a noun. And the first definition is a way of reaching agreement in which each person or group gives up something that was wanted in order to end an argument or dispute. It's the first one.
Mhm.
Second definition, something that combines the qualities of two different things. Third definition, a change that makes something worse and that is not done for a good reason.
Mhm. I think that's the one that most people don't like because they only associate it with that definition.
Exactly. And that's where I wanted to read it so that you can actually see that depending on how, again, and this is where I say even the English language has such a small limit, because you have a
Mhm.
word, and I mean we speak on it, we say it so much but in different ways. You have a word that you think will just have only one meaning and one definition behind it. But then when you go and look it up, it can have from 2 to 20 different definitions or reasonings of what the word means. So in that particular case, when it comes to a choice of what you choose to get from that word, is so much to a point where you just have to end up, either you don't choose a definition for it or you settle on one that's just like, well, that's what it means to me. Even if it could
Mhm.
mean all these other different things, that's what this word compromise means to me. Now,
Mhm.
I wanted to break at least the negative connotation on compromise because of the fact that that third definition, like you were saying, a change that makes something worse and is not done for the good reason, is where people get stuck in that because in relationships, it's like, oh man, like I like to do these things, but then your partner's like, well, no, that thing makes me uncomfortable. So you got to compromise and not end up doing that. And ultimately, when you think of the
Yeah.
word compromise and doing something like that, then you end up feeling like you're getting taken advantage of, or you're losing out on something just because somebody else is saying that. Well, that bothers them. And then three, it makes you feel like you have nothing else to offer in that particular case because you're compromising to that point. Now, the flip on that, and that's why if you do not like using the
The
word
flip is to make
compromise,
the combination, right? That's the second
yes,
definition. Yeah.
yes, which is to
I'm so glad you
combine them.
brought that up because I was going to, when we were talking about choice, I was going to give another example regarding strategy versus desire or emotion, but I lost my train of thought. And that was, but now I remember again, and and it's totally in fit with what you're saying, which is if a couple is arguing about how they want to spend the night, for example. And it can be bigger issues than that, but I want to keep it simple,
Yeah,
right? Let's say they're arguing about how to spend the night, and one person is feeling very adventurous and wants to go on a spontaneous road trip to, Vegas or whatever, right? Or even Lake Tahoe and go skiing.
yeah,
And and the other person is like, no, I just want to stay at home and watch TV and relax, right?
yeah,
So, and they're both stuck on the strategy, because they think I want to go on a road trip is what they actually want, and the others I want to stay at home. But if they really, started thinking about, okay, what do I actually want to feel here,
mm-hmm,
right? So let's say that one person who wants to go on the road trip just wants a sense of adventure,
yeah,
and the other person is just wants connection and relaxation, right? Then they can compromise by maybe staying at home and watching a travel documentary or even an action movie on TV and feeling so one person can feel that sense of adventure still, right?
yeah,
Even though it's considerably reduced, right? And the other person can still have that connection that they want. So
yes,
that's an example of compromise. Once you know that the difference between strategy and desire.
yes. And that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to visit the word compromise because yes, I did. Again, I had my bias feeling when it came to the word. That's why I wanted to look in another word. There's two words that you can use if you don't necessarily like the word compromise or what it can, trigger for yourself or anybody else is combine because that's what you're really doing when you are coming to sit down to figure out what you're going to do together. You can combine things, or I like to use the word collaborate ultimately
Mm-hmm.
because that's what you're ultimately doing when you're compromising. You're figuring out, you're trying to collaborate on how you both can address an issue and figure
Mm-hmm.
out how that can work for both. It's a mutual thing unless
Mm-hmm.
you do what would be not a communal but an exchange type of not only relationship but decision means that okay, if we do it this time then you owe me that next time, and that could be,
Mm-hmm.
again, that could be another choice and another option. But when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to where do you stop compromising your values, that is where you have to choose again why and what you want to end up doing
Mm-hmm.
for that point. And again, the word compromise doesn't necessarily have to be negative, but what it provides you is a space to figure out what are you going to end up doing. Like, are you going to compromise about it? Are you going to continue arguing, or are you going to decide to find a solution to the situation that aligns with you wanting to still feel loyal to? We're still talking about a relationship. Still feel loyal to the person, but then at the same time get that need to go out and you know, like you said, maybe
Mm-hmm.
travel or go out and express wanting to connect with other people. It doesn't have to be in an intimate way, but you have that feeling and desire that you
Yeah,
want to
more than
put
one
out there.
solution opens up. Like
Yes.
they can go out to
What's up,
a
Van?
party in their city, right? So they still have that connection, and they still have that sense of adventure. Or they could even have like kinky sex that night, and that can be adventurous. Uh, and then they can that still has that connection that the other person wants, right? Although that would might require further negotiations as well. But it's a great example of like we keep negotiating, until we get that perfect optimum thing, the middle ground that both people can want and feel like totally satisfied.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for those out on there, I mean, still to Kuna's point, for everyone out there, I gotta shout this brother out. Shout out to brother Van you Wallen. Y'all need to go
Hey.
check out Van. I forgot I'm striking on your DJ name, brother, but please, if y'all want to go and find out who Van is, I'm gonna end up putting his information too at the end of this live, because please go tap in with the brother wherever if you are. If you need a DJ, you need a hype man, whatever it may end up being, but it's another
Ooh.
dope brother. So shouts out to Van U Wallen in the building on IG. If you follow on IG, Van U Wallen. But continue on. That's why again, it is important to, on top of the compromising and a value of yours, would end up being that you value communication. It's
Mm-hmm.
important that you're able to communicate that to a situation or a problem that you may be having. Again, in this particular case, we've been using the example of being in a relationship.
Yeah, I think you do need a partner from the very beginning with some set of overlapping values. You can each have your own individual values, but I think at least some of it should intersect and
Yes.
overlap like a Venn diagram. And otherwise that relationship isn't gonna last long no matter how much, that couple compromises. Like
And
if the
that's
values are
why.
totally different. Like
And that's why it's very
yeah.
important that during that process of courtship or, the initial dating, is that you vet out those things. You
Hmm.
figure out, does this person have very similar core values to yourself?
Hmm.
And if they do, then you can continue on and to learn more and more of what that is. It may not be to the same
Hmm.
extent as you, but that leads open to a door for y'all to have a conversation or talks on about it. If again, relationships is not going to be this whole relationship goes lovey-dovey, this is the greatest things ever happened, there's not going to be no problems. No, there is no fantasies when it comes to relationships is hard work, y'all. Okay, I'm not saying that, I know how to do it with relation. No, I still learn every day. That's why for me, when I think of the word love, when you love somebody, for me, I break it into an acronym: is learning others values every day, or learning our values every day. So literally figuring out, okay, the person can change day to day depending on what they may be feeling, what may be their desire, and from there learning how to, not just again, just if you don't like the word compromise, but learning to collaborate with a person to be able to build, because that's what a relationship is basically doing. You're on a ship. If you want to use a an example, you're on a ship. In relation to you and your partner, you got to figure out, all right, who's going to be the captain? Who's going to steer this? All right, who's going to be holding down the sails? All right, who's going to be the co-captain? All right, who's going to handle this part of the ship? Who's going to handle that part of the ship? You guys are building towards something. So it's going to be hard work. You just can't just sit in you expect to be the person in the driver's seat being like, all right, I ain't got to do nothing. We good. I'm just chilling. I have nothing to worry about. My partner's going to be able to do this and handle everything, and just think that it's all going to be that. No, you got to put in the effort. When people talk about, the whole, you bring in half and I bring in half to the relationship, I'm not with that. You bring 100 and I bring 100, because it's going to be work regardless. Yes, there might be times where you might not, feel up to the task. But again, relationship, you're building, you're supporting each other so that happens. So when somebody has a quote unquote off day, or when somebody's, not up to the task, you can support them in a different way. But again, that's going back to the whole start of being able to vet the person properly. Now, when it comes to, where do you stop compromising where do you stop compromising your values? It starts with that boundary. Okay. Where is that boundary for you? So for me, again, I'm gonna use my example. For me, the boundary for me when it comes to applying for a certain job was, right now, I don't feel safe getting a shot. So I know that's my boundary. So when I'm applying to places and figuring out spots, knowing that, okay, that's going to be, your quote unquote a deal breaker for me. Unless, again, you have the options of you got the
Mm-hmm.
testing weekly, you have to do that, go find this here, or you can get the exemption, then a this here, you can show from a doctor, et cetera, et cetera. Or if you know people wherever you're going that you're working with, they can end up giving you recommendations for other different parts, either in that same company that surprisingly might not even require you to get, the shot of these things, or different places that aren't requiring it. Again, but that's where you really start to figure out where you stop compromising or stop collaborating on things is when it hits a certain boundary. It's basically learning to come in with your ethic, the side of it. If it doesn't sit well with you, then it's something that you need to look at and address why it doesn't sit well with you. Because I'll
Yeah.
give another example, and then I'm gonna pass it to Kundin. I'll give y'all another example, and I've used this probably at the beginning of this season, but I had to run it back. There is a situation that I had with a past acquaintance that wanted to get me on their team doing basically this was for me personally. I've seen it. It's basically a scam. But when I came to it, I came to know what it is. We're getting me to do this, but they've been talking about it for years on end. But I knew them as the person, so I was more on the personal side versus the business side. So I
Mm-hmm.
literally was like, you know what? Like I rock with this person. So let me take some time, do my stuff, figure it out. And I know they've been taking a long time to get to me on it. So you know what? All right, let me hear them out again about this. Hear the person out. It's still not sitting well with me.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the options as there is given, and I'm just like, yo, I still want to connect this person because I know if I don't, then it's going to cause a whole issue. All right, let me at least take a first step in. I take that step in, my whole body, not going to say it shuts down, but it just feels uncomfortable. So it got to me at that point to figure out, okay, why did I make that choice? I made it because I didn't want to cause no friction between our personal relationship. Now, what
Mm-hmm.
was the compromising part is something about this wasn't centered right with me. I didn't like the certain approaches and the values that they were standing for. I don't like being competitive in this sense to try to outdo other people, to try to shine other people. That's not what I like doing personally, values for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I stepped into it because of the fact that I value my friend, or used
Mm-hmm.
to be now friends. But once I got deeper into the program and I looked at stuff, I was like, yeah, I'm not signing my name on this dotted line. I may have put up the initial fee to get in, and that was because off of my values that I was a person of my word and I would step in and at least initially start. But then I know this is not really what I value because it doesn't sit well with my core values that I had to detract myself, cut it
Mm-hmm.
off, finish it from there. And unfortunately, because of the case that it didn't touch there and it didn't sit well with me and my values, it broke a relationship off, which ultimately you would think if you have somebody that you really valued as a friend or a person was able to hear you out and listen, that they would understand why you decide not to do that. But when you have people that stuck, unfortunately, in these particular scams and things and stuff of that nature, that's the first thing that gets attacked is the mindset. So you
Mm-hmm.
lose out on that. So then I lost out on a friend, and that's fine because ultimately, again, I felt in my right with my values, and I didn't want to compromise no more stuff that I didn't want to end up doing because I knew the more I got into that program, the more that I was not going to only be affecting myself, but I'm going to be affecting my family members because of how predatory some of those actions and stuff are. So I was like, yeah, nah, this is not happening.
Yeah, it's a good reminder of even how your core values can have there can be maybe even a hierarchy of core values and how even your inner core values can be in conflict with each other, but eventually the higher ones or the deeper ones went out, where in this case you had one core value which was friendship and the other was, not being not being competitive in that kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the higher core values that eventually won out, even though at first it was, the friendship, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it was me being, for me, a person of my word. So I think basically,
hmm
following
Yeah,
through. But I
that
know there's
too.
another word for it. But for me, that's one of the big values that I have on myself is that I'm being consistent in what I do, and I want to make
Congruence,
sure
yeah.
if I say that I'm going to do something for you, I'm going to follow through and do it. It may
Mm.
be immediately at that time, or it might be
Yeah,
later.
commitment, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the commitment. Thank you, commitment.
Mm.
And that's another big word in relationships. If we head back
Yeah.
into it, is commitment.
Yeah.
And knowing
hmm
how much you're going to be committed to it. I don't want the 50-50. I want 100-100. I may give you 200 one time, and you might give me
hmm
200. But initially, again, that commitment, I wanted just to add to it there. But what you got? What else you got?
Yeah, but I was thinking also, even with your earlier example, it's actually a good example of how two entities, right,
Mm-hmm.
can even have the same values, maybe,
Yeah.
but still be in conflict with each other because their strategy to fulfill that value is completely in opposition to each other, right? So, with your example of you not wanting the shot because you want to feel safe,
Yeah.
and at the same time, these schools, they want you to have the shot because they want to
Wanted to
feel
be
safe.
safe.
So they both have the same value, you both have the same value, but how you're going about it is completely in opposition to each other.
Yes. And again, y'all,
Uh,
I'm not promoting whether you should or you shouldn't get the shot. Again, do what's, right and feels, safe for you. I still
mhm,
practice all the other different, methods of, protecting yourself. I know I've been doing terrible on the eating part, but I know I'm going back to at least eating a bit better. Probably not
mhm,
tonight. I'm probably gonna still eat bad, but I do what I need to end up doing. And again, I take in information, what I see, not only just quote unquote or conspiracy, other stuff, but reading articles from other real sources, as well as I've come in contact and learned from some folks who've actually, experienced it. And again, yes, the the virus can affect people all in different ways. It's very true. And that's why I personally want to see more information on that, as well as I put myself in situations where I don't have to worry about that. Sometimes I know it's like because I don't want to expose other people because some people can feel a certain way. That's why I wear a mask. Or if not, I just don't go out anywhere. I just stay home. And if I'm going to go somewhere, again, I take that mask. Or if people, are very, conscious or just, aware of it and they don't want that to be a thing, I make sure I keep my distance. I'm not giving you 6. I might go 20 on you if you that, feeling when it comes to needing that space. But again,
mhm,
I learned to not only respect, again, because there's another value I do have is respecting people's boundaries and their own choices. Again, at the same time, I literally make accommodations for that because then I know for me personally, I already know my choices and how I feel about stuff, so I'm not going to press the issue on nobody. But if that makes other people feel uncomfortable, then I know what I'm going to choose and what I'm going to end up doing. And at the end of the day, I'm still fine within myself. I still see that I'm not compromising on what I value and what I feel, while at the same time, again, I'm keeping myself safe because I've
mhm,
known what I've done, tested different methods of things when it comes to at least keeping myself healthy and knowing my body. So again, if you need it for your family, for anybody else around you, and that's the case, whatever safety measures you need to take, go for it. I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't, but just know what you need to end up doing in those aspects.
mhm.
But again,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, yeah, and also like there, there seems to be like a certain narrative to almost like socially engineer our choices. Besides the legal things that they do, like either you have the shot or you don't get the
Yes.
job.
Yes.
But there's also like the illusion that there's a consensus among scientists, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I was at a clubhouse room one day a few months ago,
I was about to
And
say, I was like more recent because I haven't heard much from Clubhouse in a long while. But go ahead.
yeah, yeah, Clubhouse has actually opened up to like Android users, and they are kind of slowly improving,
Oh,
actually. So I was in the room, and there was a bunch of people, but there was a medical doctor, an MD,
yeah,
and there was also uh, a biochemist, a molecular biologist as well, right?
yes,
And a lot of people were like either vaccine hesitant or straight up anti-vax. You know, um, all sorts of people were in the room. But at one point, because there was an actual MD who was pro-vaccine,
yeah,
a lot of people were asking him questions that he couldn't answer. And finally, the molecular biologist who actually was uh, on the side of the people who are vaccine hesitant, she was like, he can answer all of these questions. He's not actually a scientist. Like he can't,
yeah,
like he can only tell you what he's been told to tell you, like or
yeah,
what he's by his, hospital, or by his training. And so that was an interesting revelation for me that, there's this, I think one of the fallacies is the fallacy of authority, right?
yeah.
In the logical fallacies. And one of the illusions of that is that doctors are scientists when they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of eye-opening for me when I was part of that thing. And the molecular biologist, like sent me some resources. And then related to that is how ivermectin, right, is made fun of as horse medicine, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there are people who took too much of it, and in some cases it was because they couldn't get it from their doctor, so they were forced to get it from the vet, and they ended up taking too much accidentally because the truth is you don't even need that much. You need the very small nano doses of it, right? And so that's why they OD'd on it because they were taking too much. But the truth is, I learned at first I was on the side of people making fun of ivermectin, but some people pointed out it is actually standard treatment for COVID
Mm.
after you get it, like by even
Mm.
some doctors. And it is it's been proposed as a treatment in like peer-reviewed medical journals. You can read the actual journals, and this is not conspiracy theory. It's in the journals that are peer-reviewed by all these scientists, and it's
Yeah.
even been proposed as a solution for so-called third world countries because it's so cheap.
Yes. Again.
And yet the narrative warfare against it is relentless because maybe partly because it's so cheap and it can be such a great solution for the countries that can't afford it.
Yes. Again. I mean, to
And
your. I mean, to
especially
your
because
point.
you don't even need that much, you just need nano doses.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's to your point again. And I see you in here. Ace. Shouts out to you. Ace shoots in the building. Um. That literally the way that you use media
Hmm.
to now then make something that was supposed to be, you know, not only a personal choice become so political to a point that honestly, I don't remember way back when did they start doing like, fact checkers and people and stuff that would like, fact check everything that's done. But it seems like in the last at least 3 to 4 years that it's been heavily done where literally somebody says something and the fact checker's quick, like, oh nope, that's partly false. Oh,
Right.
that's partly true. And it's like, yo, like go look at this article and it's like, well, no, that article source here is good. And it's like, yo, what, again, what's the why behind a lot of this stuff? And especially with that, with I make them in that particular
Yeah.
case, we know that
In fact, two of
there's a
the
differences.
scientists who have proposed it are Nobel Prize winning scientists. Like there are nuances to it because according to the medical journals that I read, it's not a solution for every COVID case. There are like there's still like it's still in the testing phase at this point. For some cases because there's a word that I forgot. Like there's a medical term for like basically it means that like for some COVID cases it cannot be used as medicine. For some it can. So
Mm,
there are all of these nuances, but like but the narrative warfare is such that we're not even told all of these nuances at all. We're
Yeah.
just told that, oh, everybody who takes ivermectin is a sheep or a crazy person. That's the only thing that we're told. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, and again, it comes back to a whole idea. Then what's your choice is going to be, as well as, all right, so
hmm
what are you going to ultimately compromise when it comes to being a part of society?
hmm
Because we have the word too, conformity. Well, if you want to conform to
hmm
something and feel like you're not left out, you're gonna have to give up certain things, quote unquote, or you're gonna have to, really address what sits right with you, but may not seem like it's the norm in particular
hmm
society. And that's where, again, talking about, where do you stop compromising your values? That comes to you feeling, again, strong within and set within yourself, and having that firm foundation that, what, if I'm, shouts out to the sister, or shouts out to Stephanie Gale on the other podcast that I'm on Sundays. There's opinions, and there's opinions and perspectives that Steph has that literally all of us is like, nah, we don't mess with it. And she's literally like, I know it, and that's fine, and I'm gonna stay with that. And that's the thing. Knowing, even though it might not be agreeable amongst the, the whole sort of people or the group, but that you're fine and you step with it, people initially, if they're really there with you, will respect that. They'll be like, you know what?
hmm
Yeah, I know you don't. All right, I'm letting you handle that, but I can respect the fact that at least you stand on something. And
hmm
nowadays, that's not always necessarily the case. There is a reemergence, in certain folks, but again, when you're tied to a system and you are tied to, oh, these are my only options, these are my only choices, you start to really be like, okay, then what can I initially do, even though this does go and gets my value of lying? Like, can I really lie to these people and lie to myself just so that I can end up either having this job, or just so that I can fit in, or just so that I can get to this next place, knowing that it doesn't sit well with you?
hmm
Are you willing to do that? If you're not, figure out why you're not. Like we talked about earlier, address it, and then push forward to be like, it is what it is, but it's also what I make of it.
hmm
Because of the fact that I don't want to get this, now I have to go find other means and other options that doesn't involve me not lying to somebody, or that doesn't involve me having to make a choice that's not honest to me. And again, you can start saying, well, oh, you're being too picky. You're just being super difficult. Like, nobody's going to work with you. Why you got to think so hard, so critically and stuff? And it comes to a point that, when was it okay to be like, okay, you can only do this as a person? Where was it okay to continue to limit you, even though you know for yourself, okay, and I'm going to use a food example. You know for yourself that honestly, fruits, vegetables, and fish is for you, or even if not even the fish, but you know that you're
hmm
more of a vegetarian lifestyle is good for you, because you've noticed what it does for your body and how it fuels you and how you feel, versus having meat in your diet. But then you go to a person that has some type of, again, power, or giving you a choice, and you're saying that you don't want to eat that meat. Now it's like, okay, well, I can't cook you nothing, so now you're making it difficult, so you're just going to starve. Like, I'm not going to give you nothing, and that's your fault. And it's like, no, I know what works for me. It doesn't necessarily work for you, but I know that it works for me, and I've done for it fine. And it's not to disrespect you and say that, yo, I don't want to eat the meat because you cooked it wrong, or this, and that. It's like, no, I personally have made that choice, and I know for me that it helps improve my health, and I've had less problems when it comes to that. That I don't want to do that. It has nothing to do with I don't like you and I'm trying to overstep your power. I appreciate you saying that you wanted to cook for me, but unfortunately, that's not what I eat.
Hmm. Yeah, like there is a huge, push to socially engineer choice, especially when it comes to the shot, where, I mean, the vaccine, where like, the narrative is all unvaccinated people are selfish, evil, stupid, crazy, you know,
Yeah.
uh, and it hinges upon our fear of being an outcast, or fear of rejection from the group, our
Mm-hmm.
desire for approval and fitting in, and even self-image, right? Where a lot
Yes.
of people are more influenced by their self-image than their core values, like their desire to keep up a certain self-image, especially that good evil false binary, right? Where
Yes.
they think they're either a good person or they're evil. And so right now the narrative, the social engineering is, oh, if you're a good person, then you are vaccinated. And if you're not vaccinated, then you're not a good person. You're, whatever version of bad person is the narrative for that person, where
You're
it's like the
crazy.
evil,
You're
stupid,
cuckoo.
crazy.
You
Yeah,
were conspiracy theory. Oh, oh, look it. We have
yeah.
all of these terms again to, and we looping it in together to demean, but at the same time limit not only your power and your autonomy, but also to limit the options and choices you have. And it's done effectively because we buy into it as a people. If we knew that, oh, we can't divide people off of the fact that they either want Coke or they want Pepsi, and say that, oh, the Pepsi people is better than the Coke people, if that was not a tactic that was effective, we wouldn't be having these particular issues that we have now. We will
Hmm.
be able to organize more and see a lot of this. And
Yeah.
honestly, for the people that's in my
And there
circle,
is no like nuance, right?
I would definitely
Yeah.
say for the people in my circle, that's that's the consensus. Whether you did get the shot or you didn't get the shot, is that you still respect the fact that people took the measures to what they needed to do for them again,
Hmm.
or their family, or whatever their reasoning for that choice, and they did not compromise themselves because that was a choice they wanted to make. Some of my homies, unfortunately, they had to because they were like, because of that. But for the folks who still willingly wanted to on either other side, it's all love and respect. But again, you got
Hmm.
media, you got other outside program thought that invades that. And that's why you have to be careful. Like we said earlier with the choice, is you got to make sure, is that really the choice you want to make, or is it somebody else that's telling you that's the choice you should make? So
Hmm.
are you going to compromise off of that because of the fact that the values that you thought that you had might actually be the values of somebody else that wants you to have those values? Yes, that sounds
Hmm.
like a conundrum, y'all, but basically it's saying is, do you really believe or do you really value what you value?
Hmm. Yeah, and especially for Black and Brown and Indigenous people, there's a long history of government overreach and medically testing and abusing without informed consent, whether it's the Tuskegee experiment of injecting Black men with syphilis for 40 years. They did that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Sterilizing Black men. They did that in Puerto Rico when they were trying to invent the birth control pill. They sterilized a lot of women uh,
Hmm.
without their consent to to keep testing new versions of their birth control pill. But even after it was invented, apparently they were still being sterilized for some reason, because apparently the Margaret Sanger and the other two scientists who were behind it, they actually believed in birth control as a form of depopulation. Like
Mm.
that was the original agenda. It had nothing to do originally with giving women a choice. when it comes to giving birth. It was
Mm.
about sterilizing brown women and indigenous women because they linked poverty with overpopulation, and especially the overpopulation of black and brown people. It was and indigenous people. So it was literally a eugenics agenda, like
Mm.
that happened in Puerto Rico. Something similar happened in Guatemala, where they were sterilizing the women there as
Yeah.
well. So so when a black or brown or indigenous person now thinks, who knows what's in the vaccine? Like, even if we don't know the science or anything at all, like, it is natural for us to even ask the question, okay, what's in the vaccine? Who knows? Like, we don't know. Like,
Why do you have to
we're
ask? There
told,
should be no reason. You
yeah,
should just go along with the go along. Don't be difficult. When
yeah,
well, you've been vaccinated long. You got immunization record for all the other stuff for measles, mumps, blah 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 blah. All these other ones. So why are you so fixated on this one this time, huh? You're not a scientist. You're not a virologist. You're not doing it.
mm, yeah,
All those
yeah,
points.
yeah. In fact, I don't mind. I wouldn't mind taking the vaccine from Cuba, the one that they just invented, homegrown over there.
Well,
Like,
because we've been locked
yeah,
out. We've been locked out
yeah,
from the that health circle. I forgot it's a particular like global like health like care type of setup where it includes Cuba and all these other different places that have
mm,
solutions to different
mm,
viruses and different diseases. Because the one that was out there in Cuba, it's not like necessarily I don't want to say it's not necessarily a vaccine, but it's another medicine that they've used to treat like 26 other different um, viruses, and it's been effective. So
oh,
that one's
I didn't
already
know
been,
about that.
yeah.
So
It's been.
they also did produce an actual
I
vaccine as
found, I
well.
found.
Like,
Oh, what's up? Oh,
I
man,
found
good
one.
to see you in here, brother. Man, peace and love to you. But yeah, continue, Cooney.
I didn't know about that part.
Yeah,
So that's basically it's two different things they invented then, because they did also create an actual homegrown vaccine because they didn't want to rely on the United States. And similar to, I think, China and India too. China has the Covishield, but they have their own vaccine as well.
mm-hmm.
So I don't know about India, but yeah, I think for sure China, because my mom in Burma is using the Chinese vaccine, Covishield.
Yeah,
So, uh, so yeah, there are other options, right? Like in other countries, and I might even trust the Chinese vaccine over the U.S., although I don't quite trust the Chinese government either.
yeah,
But uh, but yeah, I was saying like it's not being anti-vax; it's about being anti-government rather, right?
yeah,
Where I'm okay with taking the Cuban vaccine,
yeah.
so that goes to
But
show for me I'm not anti-vax at all.
But if you're anti-government, that means okay. What about the place in the building that you're living in? What about the water system that's using? What about
Right,
the lights?
exactly.
What
Yeah,
about you voting? What about you going to the grocery market and getting the foods? What about all the subsidized loans? What about the what's it called it? The stimulus check. Like if you didn't care about any of that, then give them back the money. Again,
and that's where we
yo,
get into the compromise, right?
exactly. There are
Where
certain
it's
things that you're gonna
mhm,
have to end up. And when we say again, shout outs to those who just came through. This is what's the
mhm.
word Wednesdays. Today we right now we talking about where do you stop compromising your values. So let us know what's the word on that, how you feel about it. But yeah, but that's why if you don't like the word compromise, for me, there's two other words you can use. You can either use combine or you can use collaborate. But ultimately, with the compromise is figuring out okay, how can you meet basically eye to eye with a person or a situation to be like, okay, well, I know I'm not gonna go for this, but even though this is a part of the system still right here, it's still gonna help me benefit while at the same time I can still address other issues that are in the system. That's like me telling my homie because again, I'll go back to the food situation because my homies make fun of me about my choices in food. Because they'll be like, "Oh, you don't eat red meat, you don't eat chicken, you don't eat this, but you do go and eat cheese pizza, or you go and eat fries. Like, what's up with that?" And it's like, I'm like, yo, there's been staples in my family of that. Of course, I've been eating meat and this for a long time. It takes time to cycle that stuff out. So
Mhm.
when you cycle things out, you have to find substitutions for those things. In my
Mhm.
particular case, I haven't found as many substitutions for certain things. So I am slowly finding my way to be like, okay, then I'm not going to necessarily need cheese anymore. I'll find a substitute for cheese. I know there's vegan cheeses, but I haven't looked into that.
Mhm.
At the same time, yes, I still eat fries. I mean, ultimately, yes, it's still fried, but that doesn't mean that it got all the other extra chemicals that I don't necessarily want with it.
Even
So,
fries is still better than red meat.
yeah, and at this point, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, if you don't want me to do that or eat this, you want me to starve? You don't want me to eat anything? You want me to go out there and just only just get light from the sun and that's it? Drink water? That's it. Like, what
Mhm.
do you want? Like, there's a certain point. There's to a point that it's very hard too, because a lot of things are
Mhm.
processed nowadays. Almost everything,
Mhm.
even some of the vegan options that you think that you have, is so processed to the point that it defeats the
Mhm.
purpose of it even being vegan in the first place. So again,
Yeah.
there's a place where you're gonna have to compromise on some stuff until you find a suitable other option or choice. And again, when you make a choice and a decision, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, that's the end all be all. It might be a problem that's going to be, or a challenge that's going to be ongoing for years and years, or it might even be for months. So maybe your first month, you're like, well, I decide that I'm not going to eat any type of fries. But then you come across another solution. And it's like, oh man, dang, I actually like eating snap peas because literally the texture of it reminds me of fries, but at the same time is a little bit more healthy in a substitute, et cetera, et cetera. But you took that option of figuring out that, yo, if I'm not going to eat this type of thing anymore, and now like even though I was still eating something else that I didn't want to, later on down the line, you either did your research, you came across somebody, or you're just like, oh dang, this actually has the same sensation as eating that and it's healthier. All right, I'm all game for it, and you end up doing that. So you got to give people time to grow within the options and choices that they make, and not know that yes, you may compromise at that point in time right there to be able to figure out what you want and what you need. But just know that then it's like we get to the point. Now it's like, okay, either you have something or nothing at all. And it's like, we don't only want to go with those points. There's much more other available options and things to choose from. And you won't feel as you're compromising everything.
Mhm. Yeah, like a friend of mine I saw a post by their mom saying like make your own like plant-based milk instead of buying the grocery store bought because the grocery store bought is maybe like
Seedless.
too processed, like you're saying. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. It's way more energy and resources to buy the nuts, uh, and then put it in the blender, mix it with the water, and blend it together, turn it into powder, and all of these things. And it's like, okay, so the plant-based store-bought might have some problems that I don't know of, apparently because they didn't explain in that post. Uh, but it's like still better than, the pus-filled pasteurized milk, the cow's milk that, they injected with hormones and like, all of these things like that apparently even has cow pus in that you can't see. So it's like, again, that's the compromise, right? Where it's like the plant-based milk is still better than the pasteurized cow's milk,
Yeah. I mean, and that's
with
why right
hormones and
now,
all. Yeah.
that's why I tell people too, and I've made sure that I've gotten my facts straight on it too. Is that the reason why too cheese is so addicting and it makes you feel good is because cheese actually has a substance or a chemical in it that actually mimics or is very similar to morphine. So it's
Oh
not
wow.
specifically morphine, but it's a substance and it's called casein, if I'm saying it right, or casein is C.
Casein, yeah, the
Yeah,
protein.
casein, the protein that it
Yeah.
actually mimics and is very similar to morphine. So that's
Oh,
why
I
you
didn't know it.
start to, yeah. I looked a lot of this stuff up
That's
like when I'm
crazy.
learning. So, oh, spoiler for those folks if you've known all of this. Yes, if you're still eating it, I'm not saying that you're terrible or any of your choices, but like you are learning after a while if it's something that your body wants or it doesn't. Again, everything in moderation while at the same time, figuring out what really works for you. Like, yeah. So Don't think I ain't no better because I still eat it, so it don't matter. I'm learning to wean off of it at this particular point, and for me, unfortunately, a lot of dishes that my family cooks has a lot of amount of cheese in it. When you're making desserts and things, it still has milk, eggs, and all these other different ingredients that you don't necessarily remember when you try to look at a package, but it has a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But again, not coming back, coming back to the main topic, and this is gonna start. We're gonna start rounding it out. Is um again, where do you stop compromising your values? Again, it is where you begin to see the signs of something crossing those boundaries and those values that you have set. And
Mm-hmm.
when you see that and you notice that, not in the negative sense of compromising yourself, but in the sense of collaborating and combining on points. Because again, like Kunin brought up, y'all might actually have the same value. It just might be executed differently. That will open
Mm-hmm.
up dialogue and discussion to figure out, okay, then how can we pair this together? Because we want the same value, but it's just a different method of how we're getting it.
Mm-hmm.
So you figure out that, and then from there will stem all the other various options, which then ultimately you'll be able to make your choice and your decision. But again, it's that inner feeling that you get. For me, that's how I know when you're about to compromise or something, is you'll feel it. Again, our decisions, logic and emotion, but ultimately we choose out of the desire and emotion at the end of the day. So if you know it doesn't feel right when you're making a decision, then that's something that you need to address.
Yeah, I think the challenge too can be like when somebody or even an organization, basically an entity, cares more about self-image than their values, right? So even with the short example, maybe some of these schools don't even care about safety, but want to look like an entity who cares for safety. So that's self-image. Or even
Mm,
looking like a good person or a good organization, then it becomes more challenging. Like, I think people really need to be sincere about their core values. First, I think even
mm,
have the self-awareness to know your core value, which some people don't, and some organizations don't. And
yes.
second, to actually follow through your core values rather than just keep up self-image. Like a good example is Enron, which went, bankrupt because of frauding people, right?
Mm,
But in their lobby, like they had these really beautiful core values like integrity and all of that. But in their real daily operations, they were following none of those core values.
wow. Again, it's funny. The song said it's funny, but yeah, you have a bevy of choices. You know what your core values are, but ultimately your why and your reason behind why you're going to do something. Again, I know I keep saying it, but it's just important because to Kundan's point, there is that literally, hopefully there's no conflict of interest, or if you're decided
Exactly.
again to say that, oh, this value doesn't fit well, I'm trying to really just worry about how we look as well as how much money and revenue we can bring
Hmm.
in. So something you know, has to give. And it's like, all right, forget it.
Mm.
I know we're supposed to be a company that's supposed to be helping the homeless and finding different resources and stuff. But dang, our connection with this particular homeless outlet, we gotta cut it because it's too expensive for us. So nah, we can't do it.
Hmm.
Even though it might have shown that resource was still effective, may not have been as effective you might want it, but it's another option to all the other, choices that you have. But the company's like, nah, it's too expensive, let's cut it out. And that comes to the profits. And that's going to be, this is my last point. I'm going to say that here. That's the reason why a lot of the things right now, not only with our choices and compromising, is having such a big effect on a lot of us, is because there's a financial incentive behind it. And we know
Hmm.
capitalism, and that's how things are set up in this system, is that for you to thrive, you got to get the bag. You got to have some type of, financial, standing for you to continue to do the things you're doing. Like for me to be on here with you, like I got to pay for a phone bill. Like, mom and, places we got to pay for lights. We got to pay for it. It literally in anything that you're trying to do, unless you're just trying to breathe air, which there's actually places where you can actually go to air bars and you pay for different types of quality of air to actually breathe. But ultimately, finances and money has an impact on the choices as well as what you are willing to compromise. Again, I'll say the last point, and I'll say the last point again, but that's why people have prices. And we said it before in other peaceful places. That's why people have a price. And if you get to that price point for them to reevaluate their values and it's going to go against it, it's going to be openly up to them to make that choice. All right,
Hmm.
Kuna, do you have anything, a last point for this that's going to
Yeah,
end up
like
wrapping in it?
when you say people have a price, it brings up, it reminds me of an interesting story about, I don't know if you remember Michael from Mo Better Mondays. He used to come,
Mm,
and
it's not ringing in my head right now, but go ahead.
this guy with the white guy with the beard, he moved
Uh,
to, I think, Phoenix, Arizona. And
oh, wait.
yeah,
Wait, you said Michael or you mean Daniel? Or David?
no, Michael, right? Yeah,
Okay. Because there's another person
yeah.
I know that he used to come to Mo Better Mondays. It was David, and he moved
Okay.
to Vegas.
Oh, okay.
But go ahead.
Yeah, he gave this example like the people do have a price, but this story was kind of, I guess, impressive, I guess, because he gave this example of like I think he was oh yeah, I think he was working for Uber Eats or Postmates, something like that, food delivery
Yeah.
company, and he was about to deliver this food to this particular person at their home, and then this other person came out and said, "Oh, I'll buy this food from you," and and then the person was like, "I'll give you $100," which is like a lot more than what he was gonna get from. And he was like, "No," and then the person doubled it, no, $200, and then doubled it to 400, and I think he went all the way to 800, and he still not said no. And and the reason why he said no was he had the core value, the principle, like I'm not gonna sell myself out and just give in to this person who just thinks they can just buy
By there.
whatever they want out of
Mm,
people, especially when this other person needs the food right now, who it may or may not be an emergency, but they wanted the food, right?
yeah.
Probably quickly at that moment. And and clearly the person offering $800 didn't need the food right then and there if he's offering that much. The other person needed it more.
Yes.
So, but basically the main reason was like, I'm not gonna be a sellout, and I'm not gonna give in to this entitled attitude of this person who thinks he can just buy everything, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful story,
That's a
because
crazy
yes.
story.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, well, I had a moment in time I was doing DoorDash. I mean, I didn't have that necessarily happen to me where I had that, ethical dilemma. But
Yeah.
is that's very dope. Again, you stand on that and you know where you're not gonna compromise, quote unquote, where you're gonna back down on things, but you are going to assess the situation and know appropriately. All right, this is what I need to end up doing, and this is the reason why. It's because this is right to me. Again, because everything can be
Hmm.
right. The whole subject is right. Right, wrong, ethics, all that stuff is subjective. But to a certain extent, there's certain things that we know innately that doesn't sit well. But we don't want to. Some people don't want to address that. They just want to go by logic and everything else. But did you have any
Hmm.
last point before I go ahead and wrap
Yeah,
up?
even in that situation, like somebody with maybe a different core values, opposite core values of maybe somebody who doesn't believe in kindness or integrity, but believes more in, being a go-getter or whatever, that kind of, or being daring or, right, might see this person as just stupid and be like, oh, that's stupid of you not to take free $800 that you get in 1 minute, right? But it's like, no, like, it's like, because this sort of thing can be systemic, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
what if there are enough people who will accept the $800, then it will encourage people like this and this entitlement attitude of these types of people. So it's like, but again, like you said, it depends on like each person's core values, how they view that situation.
Yeah. Awesome. With that, y'all, we're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight. So again, I want to thank
Mm-hmm.
Kunden for always coming through. Shouts out to Owen. Shouts out to Van. Shouts out to Sabu. Shouts out to everyone that came through to the live to come in and give up their time, because I appreciate everyone's time and appreciate everyone's support, because without y'all, there would not be me. There would not be no what's the word. I would try my best, but it's important, and I'm grateful, because that's what this is for. It's for not only me, it's for us to come and talk. Now, to wrap up, when it comes to current events and what's going on around you, please make sure you tune into the news. You don't necessarily have to watch it, you can read it, but it's very important to know what's going on around you so that you know how to move and plan appropriately, whether it's for the safety of yourself, your family, or just to be informed so that you don't end up missing out on something. So please make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you please keep up to date what's going on around you in the world. Second, when it comes to choice, know that you can have a bevy of choices, which means you can have a number of options to things. But depending on your situation, depending on how you look at things and your desires and your why behind the choice you're going to make, will ultimately show you what are your possibilities and options. So be willing to critically look at the reason why you're picking a certain choice.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, when it comes to where do you stop compromising your values, ultimately, again, in line with choice, you want to know that when you compromise something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just giving up and it's a bad deal. It can mean collaborating with someone. It can mean combining certain ideas, because ultimately communication is key on that, because you might have the same values but express it in a different way. Words to Kunden. And the way that you look at it and you address it, and if it does not feel right with you and it goes beyond your boundaries and what you've set, that is where you have that immediate sign to, that's not what I'm willing to compromise or stop on. So ultimately, learning your values, sticking to your values, and being able to create different options and choices outside of those values. But with that, y'all, it's been another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays. I've been your host and your brother A.D.V.I.S.S. This has been Kunden. Thank y'all for tuning in and watching. Shouts out to those who were here and watching this, participated, as well as to those who are going to watch this later on Instagram or YouTube. If you do on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for your brother at A.D.V.I.S.S Speaks. And continue, because we're going to have more content and videos like this and others coming out very soon. But with that, y'all, we'll catch y'all next Wednesday for another episode. And in that time, take
Mm-hmm.
care of yourselves. And don't forget to stay aware and love yourself. All right. Other than that, peace and
Peace and
love,
love.
and we're out.